Hello, everyone. I want to welcome all you money-making website members back. This is a special bonus webinar. As you know, Nick stays current with what's happening online in all aspects of online marketing and copy, and so he created a special bonus webinar for all of you, and that's what today's session is. And since he has things to tell you, I will be brief and say thank you, Nick, and take it away.
That's it. That's my introduction.
That's it, because everybody knows you.
Okay. I was waiting for something a little longer and more glamorous, you know.
I could pull out my bio and read it.
Nephew to the Queen, you know, the kind of full
yes.
thing. Okay.
Recently
all right.
returned. Yes.
Moving on and getting serious. Okay, so the previous webinars that I've done have always been kind of very specific on particular stages of the process of building your money-making website. This one's a little different. This is a kind of real kind of hotpot, potpourri of bits and pieces, and I've roughly broken it into categories. But what I did when I was preparing this, I just kind of sat back and thought, okay, what are the things that I do? What are the tools I use? What are the mistakes I try to avoid? What are the sites I go to? You know, when I'm building and continuing to grow my own money-making websites. So it really is a kind of collection of bits and pieces. Some of these things you may find, you're going to jump at. Others you may look at and you think, no, that's not for me, and that's fine. Just go with what works for you. So we're going to start off with some traffic building, because we all like to build traffic, and we all like to grow our traffic. I'll do a little alert right at the end of the presentation. Is kind of interesting. It's not about building anything or creating anything. It's actually about protecting yourself, protecting your asset, protecting your money-making website. But we'll get onto that later on. So one or two things that, and this is not something that I've talked about in the other webinars, but one thing you can do to get exposure is syndicate your content. I've just put up a couple of examples here. Alltop, this is a site founded by Guy Kawasaki, and they have all kinds of different categories there. And I have a couple of but you do need not necessarily a blog, but you do need an RSS feed so that Alltop can look for and find and republish your latest content. What happens with Alltop is that you go there, you find, it's a bit like the old days of the search engines. You go there, you find the category that matches your topic, and then you basically apply. You say, please include me on Alltop. And if they like what you do, they will include you. But there is a human editor. You'll either be rejected or you'll be accepted. And this, in fact, gives it, as I've talked about in the past with directories, this gives it more value because the search engines know there are human editors at Alltop, and they know that spammy people can't just automatically add their feeds to the site. So that's certainly one thing. And what happens there in terms of syndication, all they do is they just show the first 7 or 8 words of the headline of your latest content. They actually show about, I think, your 5 most recent. So each time you don't have to resubmit. It basically grabs your feed, whether it's from your blog or from your site, so long as you have an RSS feed or a blog feed of some kind. And it adds a new one at the top and drops the other one off the bottom. So there are link benefits to being on Alltop, but there are also some traffic benefits. You may get, I've noticed particularly with my coffees, with the Coffee Detective on Alltop, is that, I always get some direct traffic from there, but probably the biggest value for me is the link. Another example here, the second one is Before It's News. Now, you need a very particular kind of site to fit in with Before It's News, because they tend to focus on the crazy stuff, like, Obama is an alien, or the price of silver is going to hit $3 million an ounce by Tuesday. It's kind of the weird, the wonderful, the exaggerated, the conspiracy. But as it happens, I have a site that almost kind of fits there. So, in fact, they invited me to submit, and what they actually do is they actually take your entire article or your entire post, which is a little different, but I've tried it out, and it seems to work for that particular site, because what I make sure that I do is that I not only have an attribution like, published by, but also I put in some links into other interior pages of my website within each post. So I'm getting some links, but I also get some traffic. I get some direct traffic from there, and I get other people picking it up and mentioning it, which gives me other links from other people's sites. One thing, if you're syndicating content and they're going to take the whole article, and that's duplicate content. And what you need is for Google to know that the original source of the content is your website. Now, there is some HTML code you can put into your header area to let Google know, but I get a little confused by that sometimes. So I take the other route, and this is straight from Google's mouth. What people have asked them in situations like this, how do you know which is the original source? And Matt Cutts, who's everyone's favorite Google spokesperson, said the easiest thing you can do is tweet your content from the appropriate account. Like if I put a post or an article up at nickosborne.com, and then I immediately add that link to that article on my Nick Osborne Twitter account, then Google will pick that up immediately and say, okay, this is, and they'll take a note that this is the first time we found this content, and this is clearly the original source of this content. Now, if you do some search, you can go to Google and do syndicate my content, or syndicating web content, or syndicating my blog. Have a look around, try some things, and see if it works for you. It is a particularly in the early stages where you don't have a huge amount of inbound links or traffic. It is a way of getting your content in front of a much larger audience. You may not always get the highest quality traffic. It may not be the people who turn out to be your core visitors, but you will at least get out there and get some more links into your website. So that's certainly worth trying. And Alltop is good for any kind of website, any topic that have tons of different categories there. The other thing I would say, and I know I've mentioned this before, but I just want to emphasize this, is get busy or get busier with social media. I've mentioned in a previous webinar that all of the search engines now are taking a great deal more notice of what's happening on social media. It used to be that the search engines would sit on their kind of lofty perches, and all they'd look at is the relevance of your content, and then they'd look at how many inbound links were coming onto your pages. And the relevance of the content told them what a page was about and what your site was about, and the inbound links would tell them, hey, this is clearly a quality page because lots of people are linking to it. Social media has changed that dramatically. Because now all of the major search engines also look to social media. In other words, if I put up a web page, and if somebody of influence like Guy Kawasaki or Matt Cutts, or someone not even as influential as that, but someone of reasonable influence on Twitter or Facebook creates a link to it, then Google will look at that and say, hey, the page must be good because Matt Cutts linked to it in his Twitter feed, or Guy Kawasaki mentioned it on his Facebook page, or even Rebecca Matter linked to it. That'll make a difference. Anyone who has reasonable influence through social media, when they link to your page through Facebook or Twitter, and it's just those two as far as I know for now, Google will look at that and say, hey, that's a thumbs up. As a result, I've been kind of redoubling my efforts with Facebook and Twitter, particularly on my Coffee Detective site, Because the other thing that'll happen is if I link to an internal page on Coffee Detective as part of putting it onto my Facebook wall, the number of people who like it and comment on it will also make a difference. Like Google, Yahoo, and Bing will look at that and say, hey, wow, this page is obviously a good page because lots of people are interacting and commenting and liking it. So this has become a very, very important element. And it's weird because when I first published the Money Making Website program, social media was just not part of the equation at all. And now it's a very significant part of the equation. Social media not only is a terrific way to drive traffic to your website, it's also a very good way to engage your fans, as it were, your core readers, and to keep them interested and keep them loyal and direct them to new pages as and when you publish them. So it's very important just in terms of community and engagement. But equally important is the way in which social media is now impacting search. So like I say, search engine optimization is no longer just about keyword relevance, keyword optimization, and inbound links. It's now also about social media activity. So if you don't yet have a Facebook or Twitter account specifically for your website, I would create one. And also plan, as part of your longer-term plan for your site, include activity within social media as a significant part of that plan. It's no longer a kind of peripheral thing that doesn't really matter. It's now beginning to matter more and more. If you have a blog, and this is a very specific recommendation, but I just love it. If you have a blog, go and look for a plugin at a place called Outbrain.com. And I've got a couple of illustrations here, of what happens. So the top left one is that's the kind of bottom part of a post on a blog I have about single-serve coffee makers. And you see at the bottom, after I finished my text, it has this little gray rectangle saying "you might like," and then it lists 3 links. Those are 3 other posts. What happens is you put the code, you grab the code, verify it, and then you activate the plugin. And then automatically this will appear at the end of each post. And what it's saying is basically, if you like this post, here are 3 more that you might like, or it could be 4 more or 5 more. You can decide how many posts you want listed there. I think, maybe 3 or 4 or 5. I think above 5, and it just begins to look like a huge, scary list, and people won't look at it as much. Now, what our brain does is it has its own kind of secret sauce. It looks at things like, in other words, in answer to the question, which ones, if you've got 100 posts, which 3 does it choose? Well, it looks at relevance in terms of the tags that you use. It looks at the popularity of previous posts and some other factors that they choose not to share with us. In other words, they have an algorithm that says, hey, if someone's just read this post, they'll probably be interested in reading one of the following 3, 4, or 5 posts. Now, there's also, I can log in each day and I can find out which of those related links people have been clicking on. This is enormously valuable. Well, let me step back for a moment. It also tells me what percentage of people, after reading the post, are clicking on these related links. And for one of my sites, one of my blogs for which I use Outbrain, typically between 12 and 13% of people who read the post then click on one of those links. Now, that is huge. It's huge for a number of reasons. It doesn't get me more readers, but it means that I'm getting 12 to 13% more readership. In other words, they're staying longer on the site and they're reading more than one item. That's tremendous because, you probably know it yourself. It's very easy to go to a website. you read one post, one article, then you leave, and maybe you never even return again, or you wait until a link crops up somewhere before you go back. So to keep someone on your site to read 2 or 3 pages of posts is very, very beneficial. You're far more likely to really engage them and want them to come back more often. Also, if you have money-making elements on these pages, if you have affiliate links or you have Google AdSense or banners or you're selling something, if you can get a visitor to look at 2 pages instead of 1 page, you've now just doubled your opportunity to make money off that person through them clicking on a link or an ad or whatever. So tremendously valuable in terms of increasing readership on your site. The other thing about it is that in the daily report, I'm always looking at which links are people clicking on the most. And what this is telling me more than anything else is which are my best headlines. So, in other words, if someone comes into me through a search engine, they're looking at the URL, they're looking at the title, they're looking at the description, and I'll never really know whether it was the URL, the description, or the headline that really caught their attention and made them click. If they're coming through a link from some other site, I often have very little control over how that link is described or the actual words, the anchor text within the link. But here, what I'm being able to see is there's nothing else other than the headline. There are no other factors. People are seeing a list of 3 or 4 different articles or posts, and they're choosing which one to read next. And this gives me, like I say, this amazing insight into which of my headlines are working best. So after you've done this, you've had it up for a month or so, and you start looking, you'll usually find that there are 2 or 3 or 4 posts that consistently are up there in the kind of top 5 out of 20. That tells you, maybe it's the topic that is very, very interesting to people, or maybe it's just the way you've written the headline. And I'll tell you something very easy. I know that on my report, the headlines that start with a digit almost always do better, 7 ways to, or 5 this, blah, 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 blah. People are terribly attracted to headlines that start with a digit. So amazing learning tool. If you have a blog as part of your website, or if your website is a blog, then I would absolutely install Outbrain. Great way to increase readership. Great way to read about, to discover the topics that people are most interested in and the headlines that they're most attracted by. Okay, a couple of things here on workflow. I'm sure some of you already use Evernote. I find it enormously valuable. Basically, Evernote is a way to capture. It's kind of a glorified bookmarking service, but I found, and if I use the bookmark thing within my browser, I just never go back. I never follow up. So I've been looking for years. I've used all kinds of different ways to try and capture, interesting pages and articles and images that I find online during the course of the day. I don't have time to, apply myself or make use of it right then, but I know I'm going to find that useful for an article I'm writing tomorrow, or a website I'm working on next week, or a blog post I have to do by Friday. So I use Evernote. In the left-hand column, you can create all these different notebooks. And then you get a little bookmarklet that you drag up into your browser, so that whenever you come to a page that you think, oh man, I could refer to that, or I should read that later, or I can use that in some way, you just click the bookmarklet, and a little box comes up, and it asks you which notebook you want this attached to, and you select the notebook, and then you just kind of click, collect or whatever it says. You can also do this from your smartphone. So you can have the Evernote app on your smartphone. So you're sitting around in the dentist's waiting room and you're going through some articles on your phone, and you think, oh man, that'd be great. And so just from your smartphone, you just share it to your Evernote folder up here. I've found, from the day I started using this, I now find that I use it every day. I don't think a day goes by when I don't collect something in there. So, and like I say, it's when I think back, I know that there were lots of lost resources. Sometimes I'd be doing something else, and I'd be scanning an article and say, "Oh man, I don't have time to read that, but I should come back," and I never did. So this way, I just grab it, and it goes into a folder. And when it comes time to work on that site or that blog or that article or that ebook or whatever, I know that I've got a bunch of stuff at Evernote that's relevant to that, and I just go back and scroll through and go through it. So I find that very, very useful. This is kind of a mixed-up slide here. Making sharing more efficient. I find myself using Twitter quite a lot, using Facebook quite a lot. So this top one at Hootsuite, if you use Hootsuite as a way to manage all your social media sites or channels, and you can manage Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, all kinds of different sites through a kind of single dashboard at Hootsuite. But again, Hootsuite offers a bookmarklet, which you drag up into your browser toolbar. And then whenever I come across a page, whether it's one of mine or one of somebody else's, that I think, I'm going to share that, then all I do is I just click the bookmarklet. Up this thing comes with the title of the page and a shortened URL, and then I just have to then select which of my Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn accounts I want it to go from, and then just click the submit button. So it makes it very, very fast for sharing through social media. If you don't have something like that, if you're not already using a dashboard for social media, I think you should. I would use either Hootsuite or maybe TweetDeck or Seesmic, SEESMIC.com. These are all good dashboards for managing multiple social media accounts and also different lists and groups within those accounts. But one of the things with social media is that is like I was saying earlier, it's becoming very, very important. But it is so easy to allow it to take up too much of your day. So one of the things I've looked at, certainly over the last year or so, is how to spend less time but not miss stuff. In other words, I'm just looking for ways to be more efficient in my use of social media, because I don't want to have to spend 2 hours of my day on social media. I know it's important, whether it's for a money-making website or for my writing business, whatever I'm doing, I know social media is an important factor. But I do want to use it efficiently so I don't end up with these kind of 2 hours of unbillable time spending on social media each day. The bottom right is a little unrelated, but you see the little +1? This is the new Google effort of, you can like with, you can tweet with that little Twitter icon, or you can like with the little Facebook icon you see on, a lot of articles and posts. Well, Google, after it tried with Google Buzz and kind of failed, and is now trying with +1. If you go to that shortened URL at the bottom, the right.nu blah, 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 it goes to the Google Webmaster Blog and tells you all about +1. +1, I think they launched this certainly within the last couple of weeks. So it's certainly early days, but it's useful to get into the game in the early days. And I just did an experiment. I just added the code to a particular page, and there's the button at the bottom, boom. Incidentally, just as a small sideline, you see the shortened URL? See where it says right.nu? That is my very own shortened URL. You know what? I've completely forgotten. I've got a post about it up on my blog somewhere. I've actually forgotten how to do it. But you can actually create your own URL shortener now. You just have to come up with a very short domain name. And I went for the NU because it's my initials, and I went for right because it's what I do. Whether there's actually any benefit to having your own URL shortener, who knows? But anyway, I did it. It's probably out of vanity more than anything else. But if you go to my TypePad blog, Nick Osborne, what is it? nickosborne.typepad.com. You'll find a post there about how I did that and why I did that. Be an aggregator and learn. This is this is kind of interesting. So I'm going to do the bottom one first, Paper.li, and that's paper.li. That's the domain suffix is li, and this is the Coffee Detective Daily. What happens here is this is a daily paper, and what it does is it automatically looks at the people that I follow on Coffee Detective. So obviously I'm following all people related to coffee and the coffee business and coffee lovers and coffee roasters and coffee stores and things like that. And it looks at the links within that my followers have included on Twitter in the last 24 hours, and then it puts it all together as a little daily newspaper. It picks up the stories. I don't have to do a thing. You just sign up and you create your own daily. Now, it sounds kind of useless, but it has an interesting benefit. Because what happens is that, everyone here is on Twitter. Everything about Paper.li is on Twitter. It's about the people you follow on Twitter. So what happens is that if Paper.li goes in and it grabs a piece of content, an article, a post from someone I'm following on Twitter, when the Coffee Detective Daily comes out, it has the last group of characters is top stories submitted by Coffee Kids, Coffee This Morning, or whatever, all those different Twitter names. And of course, it appears in those people's Twitter stream, and they say, oh, look, I've got a story in the Coffee Detective. Now, if they're not following me already, they probably will, and I keep getting direct messages saying, hey, thanks for the mention in the Coffee Detective Daily, as if I'd chosen them, which I hadn't. It's all automatically done by Paper.li. But it's actually turned out to be a very, very good networking tool, because people do discover when they've been included in your daily edition, and they do look at it, and they do, they often end up following you, if not even, like I say, going as far as thanking you. So it's a great way to open conversations and start conversations by having your own daily with Paper.li. And like I say, that's a really lazy way of curating. I say an aggregator. I should probably say be a curator. So Paper.li is automatic curation. The top one is Scoop.it, scoop.it. Scoop.it is a little different because Scoop.it is not automatic. It's not a daily. It's just a page that constantly evolves. And again, with Scoop.it, I have a bookmarklet. And so, during the course of the day, I'll follow stuff on Facebook and Twitter and elsewhere, and I'll say, oh, hey, there's an interesting piece on coffee. So what I do is I just click the Scoop.it bookmarklet, and a little box comes up, and I say, yeah, add this to, my Scoop.it page. And it grabs images. Well, it asks me if I want to include the images, and in fact, then I can move the position of the pictures around there. What's the benefit here? Well, the first benefit is again, the search engines find it, people find it, they find out about Coffee Detective, also with Paper.li. Also, it was within the Scoop.it one, I probably have about 60% other people's stuff and 40% my own stuff. So I'm grabbing like interesting articles from newspapers, from other sites that relate to coffee, and I want it to be interesting for people. I don't want it just to be perceived as self-promotion for Coffee Detective. But about 40% of the stories are from Coffee Detective. So I'm creating inbound links. I'm getting, someone comes in interested about an article that appears in the New York Times, and they see it, but next to it they also see an article on my website. So I'm getting links, I'm generating interest, it's being passed around, it's being mentioned in social media. Now, does it do a huge amount of good? No, probably not, which is why I don't spend a huge amount of time on it. But there's another benefit here, is that particularly with Scoop.it, less so with the Coffee Detective Daily and with Paper.li, is I am keeping up to speed. This forces me to be aware of what's new, of what's happening, in this case in the world of coffee. Because as I'm the kind of editor and curator, particularly on the Scoop.it one, I have to keep my eyes open. I have to have a look. I have to click on some links on Facebook or on Twitter and say, oh, that coffee story looks interesting. Maybe I should add it to Scoop.it. And it's very easy when you have a money-making website to kind of coast along in your own little bubble. But when you do that, when you coast along in your own little bubble, you're going to miss out on a lot. You're going to miss out on what's new today or what people are really excited about tomorrow. So being an aggregator, being a curator, and putting together something like this, you can also do it with a Tumblr blog, tmblr.com. And it's like a cross between blog and Twitter, because you can grab posts, you can retweet, as it were, posts from other blogs, you can follow other blogs on Tumblr. There are lots and lots of different curation tools online right now. Like I say, I wouldn't spend so much time that I get distracted from my own site, but it is a way to acquire inbound links. It is a way to get in front of different people, and it's an excellent way to make sure that you are current on your topic, and that you're not kind of this isolated expert outside of what's actually happening and what people are actually interested in out there. I haven't put it in here, but another way I do that is go to a site called postpo.st. It's like post, but the last st is the domain. And there you can, again, what it's looking at there is your Twitter followers. But again, if you've completely missed Twitter one day, you can go in there and you can search by the names of the people that you follow. You can search by topic across all the people you follow. You can search by topic across just one person you follow. So again, very, very quick way to find out anything you might have missed that day or over the last few days. And again, it's another important way to keep yourself current and up to date on what's new, what's happening, what's breaking. Remember, with the growth of social media, people are becoming more and more obsessed with what's new. Twitter is famous now for, breaking news events before it even hits places like CNN. Things break on Twitter first. If something happens in the world, it's on Twitter first, and then it gets onto places like CNN, second or third. So again, when I started off with my money making with the Coffee Detective back in late 2006, I was not nearly as concerned about what's happening this week in the world of coffee. I was far more concerned in the creation of evergreen content. Like how to choose a coffee grinder. It's relevant today. It'll be relevant in 5 years, and it was relevant 5 years ago. So I was very, very much focused on creating long-lasting evergreen content. Now, I still create plenty of evergreen content because it's really strong for the search engines, particularly if you get a page that starts rising up in the results. It can be very, very beneficial. But I also know that my readers, because they're on Facebook, because they use Twitter, are developing an appetite for not just the evergreen stuff, but like, hey, what's happening now? What's new this week? What coffee maker has just been launched? What different flavor of coffee has Starbucks come out with this week? So that's why I spend a lot of time with social media, or rather, I try to spend my time. I pay a lot of attention to social media, but try to use my time very efficiently and effectively. And why I also do some curating and aggregating, so that I'm always there. And what I often find is that I will find something through social media, a story. I will write up something about that story, and it breaks on my website or blog. And then it'll appear on something like the New York Times or CNN 1 or 2 days later. Now, there's an enormous benefit to being ahead of big media, because people notice it and the search engines notice it. If I break a story about Starbucks today and it doesn't appear on the New York Times until Friday, that gives value to my website or my blog, because I'm clearly, on the ball and I'm ahead of big media. That, like I say, there's value there for your readers and for the search engines. Okay, so everything overlaps a bit, but let me get on to creating more content, and this is very much related. So here's a screenshot from a part of a page on my Bad Plastics website. One of the things I do there is I look for stories that are breaking in the media. And they often break in, because it's about plastics and toxic plastics in your home, they often break in kind of specialist media before they ever hit mainline media. So I look for these, I use Google Alerts, I use social media, I use various means to find breaking news about toxic plastics in our homes. And then what I do is, again, I'm just curating here. And here it says I'm inviting other people to submit stories they find. It turns out that not many people do that, but I keep doing it. So I'll find a story. I'll look at the story, I'll read the story, and then I'll just write a headline and just a summary. I'll just do like a 150, 200-word summary, and maybe I'll take a short excerpt out of the original article. And then I'll say, if you'd like to read the full article, and then there's a link to the source where I got it from. So these are quite quick pages to create. It doesn't take a huge amount of time. I'll look at a story, give it a quick read, do a quick summary, précis, quick excerpt, link, and I'm done. Again, what's happening here is that I'm demonstrating to my readers that this site is where they can come first. Because I'm almost always ahead of the New York Times or CNN. I almost always, I'll pick a story out of some, regional newspaper or some scientific paper or something that was published in Europe yesterday. And then I'll be the first to break it in North America on badplastics.com. And like I say, this is good for my readers because they appreciate the fact that they can come to my site to find out what's new. It's good for the search engines because Google and Yahoo and Bing recognize that I'm breaking this story 2 days ahead of the New York Times, and there's value there. So that's a nice way for you to, like I say in the previous slide, what I'm doing is I'm aggregating content onto a whole different site and platform. But you can also be a curator of content within your own website and pick up on what's new. Add widgets. Now the first two, going from sort of top left to bottom right, the first two, in fact, are just widgets from Amazon. So these are affiliate widgets. The one on the left is like a kind of contextual widget. It looks at the topic of the page, and then it provides images and links to related products on the Amazon site. So I just put the widget in there and leave it, and I leave Amazon to figure out which products they should put in there. So it's contextual in the same way that a Google AdSense ad block is contextual. The one in the center there is, I got a page on Coffee Detector all about espresso machines. So one of the widgets you can get from Amazon is this kind of revolving slideshow thing, or carousel as they call it. So, the bottom right there's I can click on the button and I can move them around. And if I mouse over on each of those machines, it gives me the detail. And if I click on it, then it'll take me to the Amazon page. Now, you can see I placed that just below the headline. I don't usually, I never put an Amazon ad or a banner ad between the headline and the text. I did in this case because, in fact, the carousel actually adds value to my page because it shows people at a glance, hey, look, here's a whole, there's all kinds of different espresso machines. So visually, it's actually adding value to the page. That's why I put it up there. Yes, I get some click-throughs and get my Amazon commission, but it's there just as much as kind of visual value for people to, create that kind of context, that image context for what I'm talking about. The one on the right is Bad Plastics on Twitter. Now, you can grab a Twitter widget from a variety of places. This one I just built at, you see right at the bottom there where Sarah says, it says Get Widget. There's a site called widgetbox.com where you can find widgets that other people have created, like there are widgets for Apple's stock price or NASDAQ, and a widget is something that is, you place the code on your site, particularly on the right-hand side, this where it says Get Widget, and the widget box model is, when you put a widget on, you just put the code there, and it updates and changes automatically. So, and this is a very simple example of where each time I add, create a tweet on my Bad Plastics Twitter account, the new tweet comes in at the top here. But say if it was, here's the silver price, it could be a chart, and the chart would keep changing hour by hour. Or it could be the weather, or it could be the score during the last game between the Canucks and the Bruins, or whatever. So go to Widgetbox, look around. There are some already made widgets, or you can even create your own widget. But again, it does make for interesting content on a page because it's constantly updating. It's not just kind of content you place and that remains the same forever. So it can certainly add value to a page, particularly if you have a topic where there's a time element, whether it's the price of oil, whether it's the weather, not just time, but where things change. So there are tons of sports-related widgets. So have a look at that. Go to Widgetbox and have a look and see if there's something relevant there. Tint. If you go to tint.com, it's kind of interesting. There's a dual purpose here. I've used Tint on one of my sites as something of an experiment. And what it is when someone comes to you, if you add the Tint code to your site, what happens is that when someone comes to your site and they copy something, they copy a block of text from your site or your post, and then they paste it in the example here, they paste it into an email. All right, so you can see someone's copied the first paragraph from the page on the left. They've pasted it into an email to a colleague or friend saying, hey, this is interesting, check it out. But you see in that centerpiece with the email, I know it's not terribly big, but you can see there's a link at the bottom there. That link is created automatically by Tint. So it means that, because a lot of people will copy and paste, and they may not attribute that text to its original source. So anyone who copies from your site or your blog and then pastes anywhere, whether it's into a Word document, an email, a blog post, whatever, that the link automatically is added to the bottom of what they copy. Now, of course, some people, there's nothing to stop people deleting that, but hopefully people don't. Hopefully people think, oh, well, hey, yeah, that's reasonable, that's helpful, and they leave it there. So this is good because then when people just copy and paste stuff from your site or your blog, at least the people that they're sending it to get a link back to the original source, so you can get new visitors. And another interesting part of this is that, as with Outbrain, which I was talking about a little while ago, with Tint there is a dashboard that you go to, you log in and you have a look at it, and you can find out what text people are copying. Now, this can be hugely valuable. So, you just put up 10 pages, 10 posts, and you look back over Tint and you say, okay, how many, what do people find so interesting? What headline or opening paragraph or block of text are people finding so interesting that they're actually copying it and sharing it with other people? And over time, you get to see a picture, not only of your most popular pieces of text, the text that people copy most often, but also you kind of step back and look at it, and you'll get a sense of the type, the kind of stuff people are copying. And you think, oh man, I had no idea that out of my readers that this is the kind of slant or the topic or the part of what I write about that people are most interested in, and in fact so interested in that they feel compelled to share it. So as a writer and publisher, this can give you incredible insights. Also, when you look at your Tint dashboard, it'll show you that somebody may have copy and pasted something from your page and put it in their blog or something. Tint will give you some idea as to how far that has spread. How many people have actually been exposed to that block of copied text with the link. And those numbers can get very, very big. I looked at one, and it turns out that, one person grabbed it, put it in a post, and I know something like 23,000 people ended up, not necessarily clicked on it, but saw it. So out of 23,000, I'm sure a few people did click on that link back to my site. So that's something to look at. Make more videos. Maybe I should have put this back up with the be more active in social media. But No, this is a little separate. Video has been growing fast for years now, but it's almost like web users are, I don't know whether they're becoming more lazy or they just love video, but viewership of videos is still rising fast. It hasn't plateaued. More and more people are watching videos, whether it be on their computers or whether it be on their smartphones or whether it be on their iPads. Videos are growing in popularity more and more. So if you haven't done so already, create some videos around your topic, and you create a channel the way I have for Coffee Detective on YouTube. And I mean, some of my, in fact, this is the latest video I did, which I just put up last, I think, at the weekend. It's only had a few views so far. But, other videos I've done have had 15,000, 20,000 people view them. Well, that's really worth something. So you're getting a link back to your site anyway. And again, Google, because Google owns YouTube, notices activity on channels. They notice that, hey, Coffee Detective gets quite a lot of activity on his YouTube channel. That must mean something. There's some value there. And so, they put that in that little black book and say, okay, there's a thumbs up for a Coffee Detective. But it's also an enormously valuable way to engage your readers. If you take 100 people, like maybe 10 will come to your site to read a full page of text, but probably 30 will come to your site if you promise them a video to watch. It's just easier consumption in terms of content. Now, I haven't put it here, but one thing I will add. Whenever if I've done a video and I want to tell people through Facebook or through Twitter, I want to drive people to the page, not to YouTube, but to the page on Coffee Detective where the video is embedded. I don't just put the title. I do the title of the page, and then I do open square bracket, the word video in capital letters, close square bracket. When you actually say, and some people put right at the beginning, like video, colon, and then the title. I do the full title and then video in caps at the end in between the square brackets. That increases click-through enormously. If you have a picture or a photograph, do the same thing. Title, open square bracket, pic, close square bracket. Or open square bracket, photo, close square bracket, all in caps. Infographic, do the same. Slideshow, do the same. In other words, what you're doing is you're not only giving people the topic, but you're saying, here is the media, here's the medium. And all of these people, any kind of multimedia is always more attractive and gets more click-throughs and more, I was going to say readership, but viewership than text alone. So it's a good reason to create more videos and more slideshows and more infographics and use more photographs, use more diagrams. And like I say, whenever you're sharing through social media, flag that with video, pic, infographic, slideshow, whatever. Let people know that, hey, this is easy consumption. Click here. That's a good tip. Hopefully they're all useful, but here's one. I'm sure you've all been waiting for the money making. Actually, I only have one slide, I think, under maximizing revenue, but I hope you recognize that, in fact, all of the slides so far have been about making more money. You just make more money by having, getting higher up in the search engines, getting more exposure through social media, and basically just increasing your readership. It's all about increasing readership and increasing engagement. There's lots of studies now being done that the more engaged people are, when you engage people through Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, they are more likely to buy from you. You don't have to change your sales page, don't have to change your links or your products or services. Just the fact that people have engaged with you through social media makes it more likely that they will buy from you. But here's a very specific tip, and this is mentioned, I believe, in the Money Making Website program, but you may have forgotten, or it may have been months ago. Keyword Spy. You can do all kinds of stuff in there. There's a kind of free level. You can take the free trial. One of the things you can do there is, I use this to make more money, to find high value topics and phrases. So let me give you an example. I went into Keyword Spy, and I was looking for phrases and words. And in particular, I wanted to know how much people were paying for those keywords when they were creating ads. You know, if you do Google AdWords and you're creating an ad, you know, certain keywords and phrases cost more than others. Now, as content creators, that's interesting to us. So I did a search on coffee makers, and the average cost per click on the phrase coffee maker is, I can't remember exactly, but it was like $1.68 or something. So as the publisher, I can expect to make about 60% of that, and Google gets the balance. So $1.68 for coffee maker. But I used Keyword Spy to say, okay, how much are people paying for the keyword single serve coffee maker? And it turns out that it's much more. It's like something like $4.30 or something like that. So if I get 60% of that, I'm getting, I'm getting close to $3 for that click. That means that I then go back to my Coffee Detective site and say, you know what, I should probably create, if I got a choice between creating more pages about coffee makers and more pages about single-serve coffee makers, I should probably put effort into creating more pages, high-value pages into single-serve coffee makers. Because one, if I put AdSense text units blocks on that page, I will earn more per click on those pages. And secondly, I know for a fact that single-serve coffee makers cost more than regular coffee makers. Like a Keurig coffee maker or a Tassimo coffee maker costs a lot more than if you go and buy a drip coffee maker from Walmart. So if I have if I have an Amazon link on there, I know that I'll earn more if someone chooses to buy. So what I'm saying here is you use a tool like Keyword Spy, and I'm not saying this should influence entirely the content of your website, but be aware of this. Be aware that some pages have much higher potential to earn you money than others. Doesn't mean to say the others shouldn't exist. You can have a really, really important page that readers expect from you and value highly, and they may share it a great deal through social media. It may be very valuable to you in terms of acquiring and attracting new readers. So you don't want to maximize every page for income, but at the same time as delivering value to your readers and appealing to social media, you also want a good chunk of pages that are there specifically to make you money. And when you're thinking about, okay, what key phrases should I optimize for, which topics should I focus on, then Keyword Spy is great because it gives you, it tells you all kinds of things. But the real reason I use it is to find out what people are paying for particular phrases when they go to AdWords, because it gives me an indication of here are the high-value page topics, and here's the kind of money I can expect from getting a click on, if I put AdSense on that page. Now, we get into the scary bit that I talked about earlier. Build your own list. If you don't already have a newsletter on your site, or if you're not already offering something where you can collect emails and names, I really encourage you to do that or start doing that right away. It is terribly important in terms of building the value of your business and creating an asset and being able to make money into the future. It is terribly important that you own your website and that you own a list. And let me now explain why. All right, I could go on for 3 hours about the recent Panda update from Google. And in fact, I'm doing another webinar in a while where I'm going to talk more about this. The Panda update is brutal. It is quite unlike any other update Google has ever done. And the greatest difference is this. Google used to have, it would look at all your pages and it would index those pages. And there were two groups. It would look at pages and say, hey, these are good pages. We're going to have this in our primary index. And we'll serve this up within the search results, whether it be on page 1 or 2 or wherever. Google would then look at other pages on your site and say, not so exciting. And they'd put it in what they call a supplemental index. And being in the supplemental index means that those pages would never appear in search results. But it was kind of a no harm, no foul thing. They didn't punish you for it. And if, say, for instance, you suddenly got an inbound link from the Huffington Post to that page, Google would say, oh, wow, we're going to take this out of the supplemental index and put it in the primary index, and it will start appearing in the search results. So Google never punished you for the pages that didn't turn out to be as valuable as maybe you hoped when you first created them. The biggest difference, there's tons of stuff happening with Panda update, with the Panda update, the algorithm update. But the biggest one is the loss of that supplemental index and the fact that Google now does punish websites for low-value pages. Now, how they determine that is tricky. There's only a certain amount Google tells us. But this is, to me, the most evil face of Google I've ever seen. And there's lots of, I have a friend he has 30 different blogs. He does the same thing I do with Coffee Detective, except I do it kind of as a hobby. He does it for a living. And he has 30 different websites. And in fact, they're all blogs, and they're very, very good. And about 20% of those blogs, in fact, the best ones he has, have been hit dramatically by the Panda update. People have lost their jobs, and there's no way that anyone could accuse this guy of delivering low-quality content. He and I are talking. He has no idea why he's been hit and why some of his blogs have been hit and others haven't. And like I say, this is a very kind of punishing algorithm update. And in fact, Coffee Detective it's taken a hit of about 20% on this. Again, I'm not sure why. In particular, they're looking at either thin content, like very short pages, or short pages that have too much advertising. In other words, where you're just trying to make a ton of money, or duplicate content, scraped content. So I've had to go through Coffee Detective because I had some reader-generated pages where people submitted stuff saying, they'd show a photograph of their coffee maker and they'd say like 100 words about it. Or they'd ask me a question, a very simple question, and I would answer the question, but the whole page would be like 100 words. And I suspect Google is looking at those pages and saying, 100 words, that can't be valuable. And they're punishing the site for it. Now, that makes me very cranky because, in fact, some of those short pages were actually very valuable. I just managed to deliver the value in 100 words. And a lot of people were going to those pages because they had the same question, and they appreciated the fact that I gave them a simple, clear answer. So it raises the question of how does Google actually figure out what is high value and what isn't? But they clearly have a way of doing that. I'm sure a lot of you follow Seth Godin or go to his blog occasionally. Sometimes his blog posts are like 75 words long. What does Google, the Panda update, think of that? Do they punish him? In fact, I had a look at on compete.com, and I did see a drop in search engine traffic to Seth Godin. And again, it's not that his content is low value. It's his readers find it to be very high value. So anyway, like I said, I could go on forever about Google Panda update, but be aware, and that suddenly you can create an asset like my friend who has this business, and Google can come along one day and pull the rug out from under your feet. And that's so if you don't have your own list, if you haven't built your site, if you haven't created an asset outside of Google, then bad things can happen. Now, I don't want to scare you. And in fact, all I would say is to avoid the Panda punishment is don't do what I did, which is to say, hey, this is only 100 words, but it's valuable. I mean, I know it's valuable to my readers, but now I have to think to myself, hey, I may know it's valuable, but will Google recognize it as valuable? And if I think Google won't recognize it, then I don't create the page. It's not the way it should be. I shouldn't have to go through that process, but I now do. So always avoid short pages. So I'm doing pages now. I'm probably not publishing a page unless it has 400 or 500 words, or maybe 200 words if it has a video, or 350 words if it has a couple of images. There just has to be enough there for me to think. And I'm just guessing because Google doesn't give us any specifics. I've got to think, okay, Google's going to perceive that as being valuable. So that's a very important tip for you now. It wasn't necessary a year ago or even 6 months ago, but it is now. Be very careful about short content. Banned by Facebook. Some of you, I have Coffee Detective on the SiteCell, the Site Build It platform. They have a Facebook page with 16,000 raving fans, very, very active, tons of stuff happening. One day Facebook just banned the page and took it down. And it took SiteCell, Ken Evoy went absolutely ballistic. And in fact, it came back after about a week. And what he guesses happened is that some enemy of Site Build It sent in a bunch of complaints, and Facebook just took the page down. So again, it's a reminder that be careful not to put all your eggs in baskets that are owned and controlled by other people. All right? Build your site, make it strong, and build a list so that you have something outside of the control of other people. Again, the last scary one here, banned by YouTube. This was a lady who had a YouTube channel. She follows crime in New York City. Very popular YouTube channel. YouTube took it down. ProBlogger, which you may be familiar with. It's a very, very serious, well-respected site about blogging for business, ProBlogger.com. They had their YouTube channel taken down. I don't know whether they've got it back up again. I believe they have. But like I say, I've ended here on the scary stuff because I want everyone to be aware as you build this that to really focus on building the asset and putting as much effort possible into creating something that you own, that it's yours. No one can ban your mailing list. No one can ban your site unless you're being totally illegal. Unless you're breaking the law, nobody's going to ban your site. Nobody's going to ban your list unless you turn out to be a horrible spammer. But these are elements you have control over. So this doesn't mean to say that I don't work to get traffic from Google. I do. The majority of my Coffee Detective traffic, in fact, all of my site traffic, the majority comes from Google. So I work very hard at pleasing Google. But yes, I am aware that they can be fickle. So I can't build the entire asset on the assumption that Google will always be kind to me. And it's weird, like I say, Coffee Detective took a hit, but I have 12 different websites, and Coffee Detective was the only one that did take a hit. And it's probably the most valuable, high-value content site of them all. So very little rhyme or reason. So I'm a little cautious now. Facebook, like I said earlier, very, very important to be active on Facebook. But you use it as a tool to build the value of your owned asset, which is your own site and your own list. Same thing with YouTube. Very, very important, a wonderful tool for building an audience. But again, just be aware that you don't own it. It's not yours. It's on someone else's platform, and they can take it down on a whim. All right. So you use all of these tools, all the social media, and the search engines. You're using them to build an asset of your own, and just make sure that you hold inside of your site the real value, which is going to be your content and also very much your mailing list. Now, the mailing list, yes, it takes some work, it takes some time. You have to send out a newsletter, but it's a very valuable investment, and it means that if one of those outside third-party sites, gives you a hard time, that you still have that audience that you own. So maybe I should put this earlier because it doesn't feel right kind of finishing on a bit of a down note. But anyway, don't forget all the good stuff. Don't forget all the good stuff that came before.
Well, you're just giving cautions that now that everything is constantly changing.
Well, that's right. That's right. And I do want people to build an asset that they can control and own.
Yeah.
So do we have any questions?
None at the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, I'm going to give you a couple minutes here. I've got to leave in about 5 minutes. But if you do, don't worry. Amani will stay as long as Nick will stay. So that Site Build It one, I'm just giving people time here, but that Site Build It one, they didn't even tell them, Nick? They just boom?
That's what they do. They don't. Sometimes, I think with YouTube, they deliver, it's 2 strikes. They'll deliver a warning saying, hey, the video you just uploaded contravenes our terms of service because ABC. Please don't do it again. If you do it a second time with YouTube, then bang, you're gone. With Facebook, it just happens. No reason given. No warning, no reason given. And then I followed, Ken Evoy shared the process he went through. And, he wrote to the customer service and he got this automated response. And then he tried to get hold of other people. And there is no one there who will explain or give you any kind of justification or reason. He said it's just an absolutely awful experience. But eventually, just by being an absolute pain and being very noisy, he got it back up. And again, he got no reason. He never received a reason why it was taken down, never received a reason why it was put back up.
Yeah.
So very, very, very scary when because with 16,000 friends, that had become an important part of his marketing platform to engage with his users and prospects through Facebook. And to have that suddenly removed for no reason, that's scary to suddenly realize that here's an important asset, but I don't own it. I don't control it. But I don't want this to stop people from using Facebook or YouTube because it is very, very important that we do. But just be aware.
Right. Eric says, speaking of assets, should we be putting our websites within a business entity, something like an LLC? Well,
I think while they're smaller, I don't think it's necessarily necessary unless you want the protection of an LLC. When you create a company, it becomes a separate legal entity. If your company is sued, you aren't sued, your company is sued. Creating a company also creates some tax benefits in terms of allocation of expenses and write-offs and things like that. So all of a sudden, all your business, anything to do, any costs incurred, like your hosting and your email or whatever else, can be put as an expense against your company. But hey, if you're making, you'd have to talk to your local accountant. But just as a rule of thumb, if you're making less than $1,000 a month, or less than $500 a month, it's probably not worth it because forming a company costs money and maintaining a company costs money. There's going to be, accountants' fees and things like that. So, but certainly, my Coffee Detective is part of my company. None of it is owned by Nick Osborne. It's all owned by my company. The domain name's owned by my company, and I all Coffee Detective expenses are part of that. And of course, the Coffee Detective income goes into my company income and is taxed. What you don't want to do, whether you're just doing it within your own personal life or you're creating a company, is to actually take the revenue and not declare the tax. Because if you're ever audited, somebody will find that.
Yeah. Okay, well, a bunch of people are saying thank you. Thank you for rekindling the spark. Thanks, as usual, Nick. Great information.
Well, everyone is very welcome. I'm always happy to share, and I hope, like I say, I feel a little bad about the last scary bit. But just like I say, just put that into a little box to one side, and just keep that. Be aware of that, and then follow all those other steps that I described in the first 55 minutes.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll be posting this on the member website, ladies and gentlemen, so you'll be able to access it again.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.